All right, so I'm going to do the LightBoard FRQ, work it out for you. So if you haven't read it yet, pause this video and read the problem. Right, part one is we're supposed to write the constructor. So I'm going to copy this just so I can paste it into my destination. And it initializes the variable lights so that each light is set on with a 40% probability. So I'm going to go over here. I'm going to paste. All right, so if we go back to here, public class LightBoard right here, private Boolean lights. This is the variable we have to initialize. So we right here say lights equals new Boolean. And then right here for the number of rows, we say num rows, and we say num calls. So that creates, that initializes it. All the entries are false at this point because that's the default value for a Boolean array. But right now we're going to go through the whole array and turn 40% of them on. So we're doing, as we do with 2D arrays, we're going to do two for loops. I'm going to use r for row, and r equals 0, r less than, I'm going to just say lights.length. I know we could say num rows, but I'm just referring back to the array. Either one's fine. And now we're going to do columns, and c equals 0, c less than. Here we'd say lights row 0 dot length, or you could say number of columns. I'm not going to tell you one is better than the other. But I did want to remind you, this is how you get how many columns there are if you didn't have a number like num calls just hanging around. And now we have to do a random thing that gives us 40%. So I'm going to make a random number from 0 through 9. And if it's 3 or less, that's 4 out of 10 options. It'll get turned on. So I'm going to go ahead and just make a separate variable. You could do it all in one line, but just to keep it simpler, random times 10. So that gives us a number from 0 to 9. That's 10 numbers, to be clear. And now we could say if r less than or equal to 3, lights RC equals true, else lights RC equals false. Look how nicely I spaced it on the second one. And you could put, curly brackets around here, but you don't have to because there's only one line. So that's why I didn't do that. I normally do, but I knew I was just setting something to true or false. All right, well, that's part A. Let's go look at B. Part B is this method that it could be a little crazy. So let's just read what it says. It's going to compute and return the status of a light at a given row and column based on these rules. So it's a Boolean method. It's going to return either true or false. And then they give you all kinds of examples. But let's get this started, and then we'll come back to all those rules. So I'm going to put the header in here. And it says if all else fails, return the actual value stored in that spot. So I'm going to put this right here, lights, row, call. So this is like our default. If nothing else happens, we're going to return the value stored in that thing. So this right here would get you probably half a point, even if you didn't do anything else. How did I know to do this? Well, it said, otherwise return the light's current status. And that's this true or false, right? So, and they're showing you this 2D array full of the words true and false. So even if you didn't get part A, you might be like, oh, I see, part B, we've got all these trues and falses. And okay, so they have a thing. If the light is on, return false if the number of lights in its column that are on is even, including the current light. I know that seems a little crazy. And if the light is off, return true if the number of lights in its column that are on is divisible by 3. Okay, so, and then otherwise return the current status. So we've already got that part 3. So what I see on 1 and 2, they're both kind of crazy, but not too hard to figure out. We just need to figure out how many lights are on in the column before we can figure out 1 or 2. So let's go over here, right here, and let's figure out how many lights are on in each column, in the column that we're asked. Like it's this column right here, call. So we're going to make an int variable called count, set it to 0, and we're going to do a for loop, go through each row, int r equals 0, r less than lights.length, r plus plus. So we're going to go through the whole, we're going to go through all the rows, but with just one column. And we're going to say if lights are call, you could say equal true, but that's the same as just saying if that, because it's a Boolean expression, right? That the thing stored at lights are and call is already true or false. So we don't have to say equals true. If it makes you feel better, go ahead. They're not going to take points off for that. So if it's true, then we're going to add 1 to the count variable. Okay, so after this for loop, now we know how many lights are on in a particular column. Now I'm hoping you can see why we only had one for loop here. Let me go back to their thing. If they're saying, hey, please check, run this thing on 0, 3. So that's row 0, column 3. So here's the word true right here. Then so to evaluate this, we need to know how many lights are on. So that's 4 in column 3. That's what we just wrote the code for. So our thing uses the passed in variable for the column, and then it has a for loop that goes through all the rows, and it sees which ones are true. And then the rules are, if the light is on, return false if the number of lights that are on in the column is even. So how do we know if it's on? It's already true or false, right? So if lights row column, I'm going to say and. So this right here, we could say equal true, but this is it. If lights row column, and what's the rule? If the light is on, return false if the number of lights in its column that are on is even. Okay, so if it's on, if it's already true, and count modulo 2 equals 0, then we're supposed to return false. Return false. Okay, so that's rule 1. If it's already true and the number of lights that are on in the column is even, then return false. You don't have to worry about what this might mean. I know that would be hard. This just seems like a really funky problem, but you can do this. And then if the light is off, return true if the number of lights in that column is divisible by 3. So that's if the light is off. So if, and you can say not lights row call. That means if it's false, and count modulo 3 equals 0, return, I think it said to return true. So if it's off, that's the false, return true if the number of lights in the column that are on is divisible by 3. So this is the if it's off, and this is the if the number of lights is divisible by 3, then return true. And then otherwise, we're just returning the state. So this is basically rule 1. And this is rule 2. And finally, this is rule 3. And you don't do if else, because these are separate things. It's like, hey, if this stuff's true, return false. If this stuff's true, return true. Otherwise, return the other thing. So it's not a if, else, else if, or anything. It has to be separate. Okay, well, I hope that helped. Let's see, I'm trying to get to this window here. Help me out here.